This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning. So Parsha Toldos deals primarily with Yaakov and Esav, the birth of Jacob and Esav, their development, and then the brachot, the blessings that Isaac, Yitzchak wanted, intended to give to Esav. And instead, Yaakov, good morning, Leah, and instead Yaakov came in and got those brachot. And there are many different approaches to Yaakov getting those brachot. And we've spent time on it in the past. So I want to go through it kind of quickly, just give you some different ideas on it. But then I want to spend more time on seeing how Esav manages this whole ordeal. My father, Zichron Livracha, of blessed memory, he was always a person who was always there for the underdog. My father was always there for the underdog. If there were any family members who were struggling with whatever they were struggling, my father became their confidant, and he'd be their cheerleader. So, understandably, my father always felt that we give Esav the raw end of the deal, that we're not understanding enough of Esav. So, with that in mind, I'll share some thoughts on how that can be understood and viewed. Boker Tov Ora, good to have you back. But let's first deal with Yaakov going in and stealing the brachot, stealing the blessings from Esav. Okay, so there are a number of different approaches. And let's begin with Toldot. And page 124 in the Stone Chumash, Perek Chaf Hey, in Perek Chaf Hey, Pasuk Chaf Bet. Okay, verse 22. So we're going to hear now about the birth of Yaakov and Esav. Rivka, like all the other imahot besides Leah, was barren. And I always like to say it's a little bit strange that all the matriarchs were barren, because you would think the very first thing on the resume, if you're applying to be a matriarch, is the ability to have children, to become a mother, right? And the Gemara points this out and explains that Hashem had them all start off as being barren. Hashem is mit'aver l'tfilatan shel tzadikim. Hashem wants the tefillot of the tzaddikim, and it's not this ego trip. Oh, I want them all to pray to me, but Hashem wants that intimate connection that we forge through tefillah, through prayer. So they were unable to have children, and then Pasuk Chaf Aleph Vataha Rivka Ishto. Rivka becomes pregnant. The children are agitated, it says here, within her. There's a lot of movement, a lot of issues going on there. And she said, Lamazan Nochi, Batelech Lidrotat Hashem. She went to, according to Rashi, the sage, she went to the Beit Medrash, the study hall of Shem and Aver, to ask what is going on. Vayomer Hashem la, and Hashem said to her through this Shem, the son of Noach, Shnei goyim bivitnech. There are two nations in your womb. Ushnei lu'umim mime'ayach yiparedu, and two great nations from your loins will spread out. Ula'om mila'om ye'ematz. And they will, one will overpower the other. They'll be in a constant struggle with one another. V'rav ya'avod sa'ir. and the older one will serve the younger one. So Rivka here had a prophecy that Esav, the older, was meant to be somewhat subservient to Yaakov, to the younger. Therefore, she understood that Yaakov is the one who needs to receive the brachot. And she sends in Yaakov. And there are those that explain that Yaakov didn't want to do this, but in a similar vein, that Abraham, his great challenge of the Akedah, was going against his natural instinct, which was kindness, love, gentleness. He had to go against his grain to do the will of God, because we're not meant to be serving ourselves. We're meant to be an Eved, a servant of the will of God. Yaakov, whose midah, whose attribute was honesty, his akedah, his great challenge was following this directive of God, not directly to him as it was by Avram and the akedah, but through the prophecy that his mother got, and he had to involve himself in this trickery. That is one approach that is taken. Another approach that is taken is, we turn to page 126, and we have the boys getting older. Pasuk Chavtet. Yaakov is baking a stew. What is this stew? Our sages say that Avraham had died, and he was making the traditional mourner's food for his father, Yitzchak Isaac. Esav comes in from the field and he's tired. And Esav says to his brother, give me some of that red stuff. I'm tired. And therefore he's called Edom. Yaakov says, sell to me today your Bechoratcha, your firstbornhood, your Bechorah. Vayomer Esav said, Hine anochi olech lamut, v'lama ze li Bechorah. I'm going to die. What do I need this Bechorah for? Now, it might appear, just reading, that Yaakov is taking advantage of Esav in his desperate time. He came in, and it says, but it doesn't say he was dying. It says he was ayev, he was tired. He says, I'm dying. Right? What do I need that for? But again, well, let's take it first at face value. Yaakov says, swear to me. He swore, page 128, and he sold the Bechorah to Jacob, to Yaakov. He sold the rights of the firstborn. Now, even if we're taking this at face value, without what the sages add, so let's say I am crazy desperate, and I pay through the roof for something that I need. Once I eat, once I'm no longer desperate, how do I feel afterwards? I'm angry, right? How dare you have taken such advantage of me when you knew just how desperate I was? And I think there are certain laws that if a person is in a very dangerous situation and offers to pay a crazy amount for someone to help him, and the person helps him, I don't know if he has to pay that amount. Right? There's an understanding that when a person in a desperate situation, afterwards he says, that was crazy what you did to me. So Esav, if he was so desperate and he was forced to give up something of value to him, afterwards he should be very, very cross with Yaakov. How dare you do that to me? But what does the Pasuk say? Pasuk Lamed 34. Vayochal, he ate. Vayesht, he drank. Vayakam, he got up. Vayelech, And he walked away. Vayivez Esav et ha-bechora. He spurned, he denigrated the Bechora. He thought that he got the bargain of a lifetime. I got a good meal. And what did I give up? Nothing. The Bechora. That is the simple reading, that Esav gave it up and attached no real value to it. According to our sages, Avram had died. This was the meal for Yitzchak. Esav hears Avram has died. That means, well, Avram, everybody, the children and grandchildren know that there was this covenant. Your children will be in a land that is not theirs, and they will be enslaved for 400 years. And then they will go out for Rechush Gadol. And then Esav said, I want nothing to do with this. I don't want this Bechorah. I don't want to be the continuity. Whatever. Yes, Ora.
I was thinking, what are the rights of the Bechor, of the firstborn, if you can spell it out?
Yes. So the Bechor is they would do the avodah, they would do the service in the Mishkan, in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, and that was how it was supposed to be until the sin of the golden calf, where everyone was involved besides the tribe of Levi, and therefore it was given to the tribe of Levi, the Kohanim Leviim, who would do this service. But basically means to serve as the spiritual leaders.
So this is what Esav was not considering something
correct.
He wanted to do.
Was not interested in.
Okay.
So go now to the end of the Parsha. So now when Yitzchak wants to give the bracha to Esav, why does he want to give the bracha to Esav? Because Esav is the firstborn. But Esav had relinquished that and had sold that to Yaakov. So Yaakov, in fact, was the proper deserving recipient of the blessing. There certainly was a communication issue going on over here. Okay, Rivka did not share her prophecy with Yitzchak. Yaakov did not share his sale, his purchase, I should say, with Yitzchak. So even according to these approaches, there is some what we would consider to be some dysfunction in terms of the communication going on in the family. Those are two approaches. There's another approach, and that is that Yaakov erred over here. Even if he had to be the one to receive the brachot, but the end doesn't justify the means. And there was deception over here. Now, I mean, just as an aside, the chances of this deception, if there are those that explain it was, well, the chance of this deception working seemed to be very, very small, right? I mean, when I was growing up, there was a man very, very dear to me, Mr. Herman Schechter of blessed memory, a much older man, and he's suffering from diabetes, and he was blind and ended up being wheelchair ridden. And my brother Joshua Lavasham and I became very close with him. We would go over there, and we became very close with him. A very, very special person. He was completely blind. We would walk into shul and say, "Good Shabbos, Mr. Schechter," and he'd say, "Oh, good Shabbos, Eugene. Good Shabbos, Josh. Good Shabbos, Mr. Dr. Ciner." Right? He knew everyone's names, not just those who came on a weekly basis. If my older brothers were visiting, and they would come and say, "Good Shabbos, oh, Marty, oh, Shelley." If one of our senses are compromised, our other senses become more finely tuned and compensate for that which is lacking. He was blind. His sense of hearing was an ability to discern name people by their voices was super sharp. So to think that Yaakov is going to go in with some fur on his arms and his neck, and he's going to, and Yitzchak is going to think this is Esav, the chances of that working are basically nil. So there are those that explain, my Rosh Yeshiva Yaakov Weinberg, I didn't hear it from my friend, heard it from him and shared it with me, that this was all part of the game to see if Yaakov had the gumption, had the initiative to go forward and not be so shy and sitting back, but able to lead. Okay. Putting all that aside, though, so a fourth approach, and Rabbi Sachs writes along these lines, Yaakov made a mistake. And we see it came back to haunt him. He deceived his father. Who deceived him? Lavan. With the whole marriage, he worked 7 years to marry Rachel, and he was deceived. He was given Leah. According to the Medrash, the next morning, he said to her, hey, I called you Rachel, you answered. I called you Leah, you answered. Meaning, why did you deceive me? She responded, I learned from the best. Your father called Yaakov, you answered. Your father called Esav, you answered. And then again, with Yosef, the brothers bring the bloody garment that he had given to Yosef. And once again, he was deceived. Yehuda, who's the one who deceived him with the garment, was deceived by Tamar. This set in motion a whole series of deception. And actually, Yaakov wanted to make good on this. And just one second, Parsha Vayishlach. Yaakov is now going to meet Esav after having been away for 20 years. And he goes and he sends all of these gifts. And then on page 178, page 178, Perek Lamed Gimel, Pasuk Yud and Yud Aleph, he gives Esav this massive gift. And Esav says, please, I have so much. My brother, keep that which is yours. Vayomer Yaakov, Pasuk Yud, 178, Perek Lamed Gimel, Pasuk Yud. Yaakov said, Al na, no, please. Im namatzati chen beinech, if I found favor in your eyes, v'lakachta minchati miadi. Take my mincha. Mincha means a gift. Seeing you is like seeing the divine, that you have accepted me. Next pasuk Yud Aleph, Kach na et birchati. Now the English says 10 mincha is a gift, and birchati also explains it as a gift. But the word changed. Kach na et birchati. Take back the bracha. The bracha is yours. Take the bracha. Okay. So those are the different approaches that we have towards Yaakov's role. But like I said before, I want to focus on Esav now. So Yaakov went in and got the bracha. Yaakov leaves. Esav enters. He realizes what happened. Yitzchak realizes what happened. Let's go to page 140. Perek Chav Zayin, Pasuk Mem Aleph. Vayistom Esav et Yaakov. Esav harbored hatred to Yaakov. Al ha-bracha, over that blessing. Asher bercho aviv, that his father had given him. Vayomer Esav bilibo, Esav said in his heart, Yikravu yemei evel avi, when the days of my father's mourning come to an end. In my father's lifetime, I won't do it. But once my father has died, and the days of mourning for my father have come to an end, va'aharga et Yaakov achi, I will kill Yaakov, my brother. That's what Esav says. Vayugad Rivka et divrei Esav b'nal gadol. Rivka was told, once again, prophecy, however she knew it, because it was said in his heart, the words of Esav, her older son. And she summoned and called Jacob, her younger son. And she said to him, Esav, your brother, is readying himself to kill you. And now my son, Shema b'koli, listen to my voice, v'kum barach lecha, go, run away, flee. El Lavan achi Charana, to love on my brother in Haran. V'yashavtimo, and you'll stay there with him, yamim achadim, for a few days. Ad asher tashuv chamat achich, until your brother's anger will settle. Ad shuv ab achicha mimcha, until his anger against you will subside. V'shachach, he'll forget et asher asitlo, what you did to him. V'shalachti v'lekakticha misham, and I will send and bring you back from there. Lam eshkol shnechem gal yom echad. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Vatomer Rivka el Yitzchak. Pasuk Memvav, the very bottom of 140. Rivka says to Yitzchak, Katzti b'chayai mipnei benot chet. Life has become intolerable because of these daughters of Chet, these Chetite women. Im lokeach Yaakov isham yivnot Chet ke'elim v'ta'aretz lama li chayim. If Yaakov is going to marry a wife from the daughters of Chet, like these, from the daughters here in this land, what is life to me? Lama li chayim. Now, I mentioned before about the communication. Actually, this is the only recorded words in the Torah that we find Rivka saying to Yitzchak. I can't have Yaakov, Jacob, marry one of the local Bnei Chet, Benot Chet girls here. Vayikra Yitzchak el Yaakov. Yitzchak calls Yaakov. Now, this is the first recorded conversation between Yitzchak and Yaakov after the deception. Now, put yourself in Esav's position. Oh, Dad's calling in Yaakov. He goes by the door. Now he's really going to give it to him. He's really going to lower the boom. He's going to shout and scream, why did you deceive me? Why did you take Esav's bracha? Esav's getting all ready to hear Yitzchak bash Yaakov for what he did. Let's hear the bashing. Vayikra Yitzchak Yaakov. Yitzchak called Yaakov. Vayivarech oto. And he blessed him. If you're Esav, you're starting to boil. You're blessing him after he stole my blessing? Vayitzaveyu. And he said to him, Vayomer lo, lo tikach isham ibnot Canaan. Don't take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. That's what Dad's talking to him about now? That's the issue? Kum lech padena aram. Get up and go to Padan Aram. Beita Betuel, the house of Betuel, Avi Imecha, your mother's father. Lakach lecha misham isha, and you'll take from there a wife. Mibenot Lavan, from the daughters of Lavan, your uncle. Achi imecha. And then he continues, V'kel shaka yivarechotcha, may God bless you. V'yafrecha v'yarbecha, you should multiply, you should become many. Vayita l'kahal amim, and you will become a congregation of peoples. Vayitein lecha et birkat Avraham, and he will give to you the blessing of Abraham. Lecha ulezaracha itach, to you and your children along with you. L'rishtecha et eretz migorecha, to inherit the land of your sojourning. Asher natan Elokim la'Avram, that God has given to Avraham, to your grandfather, to my father, to Abraham, to Avraham. There's no rebuke. There's no censure. This is a completely different bracha. The bracha that was given, that was meant to be given to Esav, and instead was given to Yaakov, was a blessing of this world. If you look back on page 138, Perek Chav Zayin, Pasuk Chav Chet, 28, page 138, verse 28, we're saying in English, may God give you of the dew of the heavens, the fatness of the earth, abundant grain and wine. People will serve you. Regimes will prostrate themselves to you. Be a lord to your kinsmen. Your mother's son will bow to you. Cursed be those who curse you. Blessed be those who bless you. That was not the blessing of Avraham. That was the blessing of this world. There are those that explain that Yitzchak knew who Esav was and knew who Yaakov was. Why did he want to give this blessing to Esav? He envisioned what we call a Yisachar Zvulun relationship. Amongst the sons of Jacob, there was Yisachar and Zvulun. Zvulun were the wealthy merchants who went out and traded. Yisachar were the Torah scholars. And Zvulun had a partnership with Yisachar. Zvulun supported Yisachar, and they divided the reward for all of the learning and Torah teaching that went on from Yisachar. And Yitzchak, envisioned such a partnership, which Rivka knew was not going to work. But we see clearly that the blessings of Abraham were meant for Yaakov. So Esav's hearing this, and he must be burning inside. He must be burning inside. What follows? Vayishlach Yitzchak Yaakov. Yitzchak sent Yaakov, and he went to Padan Aram, El Lavan ben Betuel, back on 142. The sister of Rivka, right? Esav, Pasuk Vav. Vayar Esav. Esav saw. Now, when something like this happens to us, there are two ways that we can react. We can point outward, or we can point inward. Meaning, I can't believe my father did this. My father didn't yell, didn't say a word to Yaakov about the deception. Father seems to be fine with this deception. Not only that, but he gave him an additional blessing. My blessing wasn't enough. Now he gave him another blessing. The blessing of Avraham. We know the blessing of Avraham is all about nationhood and land. And he said, you'll have the land and the nation will come from you. This is wrong. I was gypped. Gypped is not a nice term, sorry. I was wronged over here. I am a victim of what happened over here. That's always one way that we can react. There's another way that we can react. What role did I play in this? Instead of just looking outward, looking inward. Whenever we have a clash with someone, it's easy to say that person was wrong, they lost their cool, they didn't understand. But actually what we need to understand is, what role did I play in it? I'm not saying that it's all my fault. But one thing that I've seen sitting in this seat very clearly, it's never black and white. It's always a question, where do we draw the line? Where in the middle do we draw the line? Is it 50-50, 75-25 this way, 75-25 that way, right? But the insightful, growth-oriented, honest person we always need to ask ourselves, what role did I play in this? What I said, the way I said it. Let's look at this Pasuk Vav now, verse 6, page 142, Chav Chet, Pasuk Vav. Vayar Esav. Esav saw. Ki veirach Yitzchak et Yaakov. That instead of slamming Yaakov, Yitzchak blessed Yaakov. V'shilach oto Padan Aram, and he sent him to Padan Aram. Lakachat lo misham isha, to take from there a woman. Bivarcho oto, and he blessed him. V'yitzav alav, and he commanded him, Lamor, saying, Lo tikach isha mibenot Canaan, do not take a Chiti wife. Do not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Vayishma Yaakov el aviv ve'el imo. Yaakov listened to his father and mother. Vayelech Padana Aram, and he went to Padan Aram. Vayar Esav, Pasuk Chet, verse 8. Esav saw ki raot benot Canaan be'enei Yitzchak aviv. The daughters of Canaan were evil in the eyes of Yitzchak, his father. Vayelech Esav el Yishmael. What did he do? He went to Yishmael. Vayikach, and he married at Machlat bat Yishmael. He married Machlat, the daughter of Yishmael, ben Avraham, who of course is the son of Avraham. Now we sort of know at this point that Yishmael is the son of Avraham. I don't need the pasuk to let me know, by the way, Yishmael is the son of Avraham. Why is it emphasizing ben Avraham? Esav was internalizing the messages over here. He was pointing inward and not being, I'm a victim, how dare they do this to me? My father does not like these daughters of Canaan. Let me go marry someone. And he just sent Yaakov to go marry someone from the family of Avraham. Let me too marry someone from the family of Avraham. And he took Machlat, the daughter of Yishmael, the son of Avraham, the sister of Nebayot, al nashav lo liisha. But he took her al nashav, on his wives. let's go back a little bit. Turn back to page 132. 132, Perek Chavav, the very end of Chavav Lamed Daled, chapter 26, verse 34. Page 132, towards the bottom there. Vayihi Esav ben Arba'im Shana. Esav was 40 years old. Vayikach Isha, and he took a wife. Who? Yehudit bat Be'eri. Yehudit, the daughter of Be'eri, Ha-Chiti, who was the Chiti, from that nation of Chet. Ve'et Basmat bat Elon. He took a second wife, Basmat, the daughter of Elon, Ha-Chiti, also a Chitit. Vatiena morat ruach liYitzchak u'Rivka. And they were a source of bitterness. Right? The English says spiritual rebellion. Okay. Morat also is bitterness. They were a source of constant bitterness to Yitzchak and to Rivka. And then Esav hears Rivka saying, I can't stand my life because the daughters of Chet. I can't live. And he heard Yitzchak, I don't know if he heard Rivka, but he heard Yitzchak telling Yaakov, do not marry daughters from here. Esav takes it to heart. And he heard Yitzchak gave the bracha. And he starts to think, why is father not slamming Yaakov? Maybe Yaakov's doing certain things right that I've done wrong. My wives have been such a source of bitterness, of spiritual rebellion to my parents. And that hasn't bothered me. I've gone on. That's been okay with me. Looking inward, maybe I've been wrong over here. Maybe I have not been the model son. I have not been the deserving recipient of the blessings. Sadly, though, he took this Machlat Bat Yishmael al Nashav, in addition to his other wives. See, he's taking a good step here. He's not cleaning out house from that which is a source of tremendous bitterness. Al Nashav. Now, it's fascinating. We have a teaching. If you've been to religious weddings, you might have seen that there is a custom that people ask the groom and bride to bless them. The groom and bride, I mean, maybe they're in their 20s, maybe they're in their 30s, right? Are they so righteous that I want to get a blessing from them? You have older rabbanim, older rabbis getting blessings from these kids, the groom and bride. Why do they go to get a blessing from the groom and bride? Why do I always ask a groom and bride to pray on behalf of myself, my wife, my family? Because there's a teaching that when a person gets married, all of their sins are forgiven. Mechila. All their sins are forgiven. And therefore they are in this very, very righteous state. I want a bracha from someone who's got no sins. Right? And the understanding I once heard from Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky Zatzal, the understanding is that a person is really like born again when they get married, because we understand that their souls were taken apart and now they fuse back together. So it's like a birth, and everything that Hashem creates is perfect, is pure, is clear, is clean. So therefore, at this rebirth, all their sins are forgiven. Mechila, absolute forgiveness. Where do we learn it out from? This verse. He married Machalat, Bat Yishmael. Machalat, interesting. That is the name, that is the word for Mechila, for forgiveness. So we learn out from here that at marriage, all the sins are forgiven. But 1 second. This wasn't Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka. This was Esav and Yishmael's daughter. That seems to be a strange, the Torah wants to give us this concept of the sins being forgiven. That's the case where it's brought. So maybe it's coming to show us even a Yishmael to the daughter of even Esav. But perhaps what we're saying now will help us understand. This was a very, very beautiful marriage. This was a marriage of Esav not angrily pointing his finger outward and saying, you did this to me. I was wronged. I'm a victim. But it was Esav looking at himself and realizing, I played a major role in this. And therefore I need to change course. I need to try to get better. And this wasn't only the first time, as we saw before in the beginning of the Parsha, right? Page 126, Perek Chavhei. He was very, very flippant about the Bechorah, right? I'll sell it for a bowl of lentil soup, for a stew. Sure. I don't, according to the simple meaning there, sure, I'll sell it. Vayivez Esav et ha-Bechorah, and he denigrated the Bechorah. According to the Medrash, who wants that whole hassle of being the Bechor? Now that Avram has died, now it's passing on to the next generations. Thanks, but no thanks. You know, we say in the Pesach Haggadah, we say, Yaakov Banav, went down, Yaakov and his sons went down to Egypt, and Esav got Har Seir. Esav inherited Har Seir without the Mount Seir, without having to go through all of the slavery. That is what Esav chose. So Esav is able to look back at himself and say, you know, I have really brought this upon myself. I've really done this to myself. I've got to look at myself. Yes, Ora.
I don't know if it is mentioned, but I'm curious, when the deal was made between Esav and Yaakov about the Bechorah, the blessing of his firstborn, the next thing we hear is that he gets up and he leaves. It doesn't say he gets up angry. And then later we hear that he wants to kill Jacob. And then I think that's the order of events. And then Jacob is getting the blessing from his father. Is that the order of things?
No, he wants to kill Esav. He speaks about killing Yaakov after he realizes that Yaakov got the bracha.
Oh, okay. Right. So was the bracha given immediately after the deal?
No. Years later.
Years later.
Later.
Oh, and then the regret is happening. So yeah. So Esav must have been thinking about what he has done over those years and realizing that was
actually he said to his father back on page 138, 140, Chav Zayin Lamed Vav, he said, Hachi Karashmo Yaakov, the last line of 138. It is because his name was called Yaakov. Vayakveni, that he tricked me. Akov, he tricked me. Pa'amayim, twice. Et bechorati lakach. First he took my bechora, and now he took my bracha. Right? According to the Medrash, Yitzchak says, "Oh, if that's the case, now I'm not. I was afraid that I acted incorrectly in giving the younger one the bechora bracha. Now I realize that it's his. But now this is very common, right? At early on, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? At a later point, though, we realize that was something significant. I do care." Yes, Leah.
Rabbi, I lost signal a couple of times, so I apologize. So you may have covered this, but all of this every year, as you know, for me, begs so many questions. First of all, if Yitzhak is raised under the kindness of Abraham, the fact that then when Yaakov, what kind of role model was Yitzhak that when Esav comes in and says, "Give me just some of that stew," and Yaakov isn't even willing to share with his own brother. Again, this still gets me. Even I understand it was funereal, but he was not asking for the whole stew. He was asking for some of it, just a little. So that begs the question. And then if Esav has had time to reflect and have this change and in marrying Machla, how come then when Yaakov comes back from Lavan, Esav is still going to bite his neck? So,
okay.
I mean, a lot of this, and also too, if he has this change of heart and marries Machla and hears these instructions, how come Yitzhak isn't willing to say, well, maybe there's some merit here, and Yitzhak never gave as specific instructions to Esau as he gave to Yaakov.
Yeah. So, Jan, I'll say to you a few things. Things are not black and white. There's much gray in the world. Okay? So, and you have to decide, are you going with the Medrash or not going with the Medrash? Meaning, by the sale of the Bechor, you're not going with Medrash. And saying, no, right? He didn't even give him that. You're not going with the Medrash that Esav was spurning the whole birthright of Avram. And right? So if you're not going with the Medrash over there, then don't go with the Medrash of when they reunite. And there, he ran to him, he hugged him, and he kissed him, and he cried. Don't go with the Medrash over there. If you want to go with the Medrash, then you have to decide. You can't go Medrash over here and not Medrash there and say, hey, right? Decide which narrative you're looking to follow. Now,
I'm not saying he wasn't turning the birthright.
Janet, let me talk. Now, going back to the sale, there's another approach which I didn't mention, but let me mention it now. Who was the firstborn of Abraham? Yishmael. Did Yishmael sell the birthright to Yitzchak? No. But who's considered the continuity of Abraham? Yitzchak is. Yaakov. Who's Yaakov's firstborn? Reuven. Did Reuven sell the Bechorah to Yosef, that he became the firstborn, that he got 2 tribes? No. Yishmael was not worthy, and therefore went to Yitzchak. No need for a sale. Reuven was not worthy. It went to Yosef. No need for a sale. Yosef had 2 children, Menashe and Ephraim. Who was the older one? Menashe was the older one. Yet the blessing first went to Ephraim. He was more worthy. Did Menashe sell the birthright? No. It goes to the one who is worthy. And therefore there are those that explain that this was an incredible act of kindness on the part of Yaakov. Esav was not worthy. You don't need a sale. It's going to go to the person who is worthy, who is deserving. It was going to go to Yaakov. The sale was a face-saving measure that Yaakov extended to Esav, that Esav could say, I gave it up. It wasn't taken from me. I sold it. Something that happens often with, very tragically, with foster kids, foster children. They'll act out, and it'll make it impossible for the foster parents to maintain them. Why? So psychologically, often it's explained that they've been rejected before, and they can't, they will not be able to take another rejection. So if I'm going to be a really, really good boy and I'm going to get rejected again, I can't handle that. So I'm going to be a maniac. So they didn't reject me, I rejected them. It was a face-saving measure that he gave to a face-saving measure, that whole sale. But let's go further. Leah, sorry, yes.
I have a question about Rivka. You mentioned that Yaakov was punished with, deception by Lavan later, and then so on and so forth, generations upon generations. But Rivka took a big part of the deception. She actually initiated the whole thing. She called Yaakov. She when she heard that Yitzhak wants to bless, she actually called Yaakov and told him to change the clothes and all that. And we never hear that she was punished, that she paid the price of this big
Interesting.
that she actually initiated and encouraged. So what is it? Because she's the one who was mentioned.
I hear that. So let me share two thoughts with you, Leah. Thought number one, you are a mother. If your child suffers, you suffer. So what Yaakov went through was also painful for Rivka. But there's another approach that I didn't even mention before. And that is, let's look at the psukim themselves. Go to page 134. That's Perek Chav Zayin. Yitzchak calls Esav and tells him to go out and make me some good food. Pasuk Hey, Chav Zayin Hey, page 134, verse 5. Let's just read it in English, save a little time. It's getting late. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to Esav his son. Esav went to the field to hunt to bring game to bring. Rebekah said to Jacob her son, Behold, I heard your father speaking to brother Esav, saying, Bring me some game, make me delicacies to eat, and I will bless you in the presence of Hashem before my death. So now, my son, heed my voice, to which I command you. Go now to the flock and fetch me from there 2 choice young kids of the goats. I will make them delicacies for your father as he loves. Then bring it to your father, and he shall eat, so that he may bless you before his death. We know what happened, but let's just take these words. Rivka is simply saying, Yitzchak wants to bless Esav. I want you to also get a blessing. You should also bring him food. You should also bring him food that he may bless you before he dies. There's no trickery here. There's no deception. Jacob replied to Rebekah's mother, But my brother Esav is a hairy man, and I am smooth-skinned. Perhaps my father will feel me. I should be as a mocker in his eyes. I'll bring a curse rather than a blessing. His mother said, Your curse be on me, my son. Don't worry about a curse. Heed my voice. Go fetch them for me. Again, she's not saying to impersonate Esav. So he went, fetched, brought to his mother, and made delicacies his father loved. Rebekah then took her older son Esav's clean garments, clothed Jacob, her young son. So at this point, until this point, this deception was something that Yaakov brought up. I'll be a mocker in his eyes. She hadn't mentioned deception. Now let's go to the very end of the Parsha again, where she calls the son, page 140. Let's go to page 140, Chav Zayin Mem Daled. She tells Yaakov, I want you to go. Let's read it in English. So now 43, my son, heed my voice. Flee to my brother Lavan to Haran. Remain with him a short while until your brother's wrath subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides, and he forgets what you have done to him. 1 second. What I have done to him? This was your idea. You're the one who sent me. What I did to him? Mom, what I did to him? Are you kidding me? This was your engineering. This was your idea. It's what you did to him, or what you commanded me to do to him. So there are those that look at this verse over here and understand that no, Rivka had wanted Yaakov to go in to also get a blessing. Yaakov is the one who turned it into a whole deception. And she then went along with it. That's how you want to go? Okay. If that's how you want to do it, here's Esav's garments. So there are two ways that we could look at, two approaches, Leah, to your point. Either, like I said before, Yaakov suffered, his mother suffered, right? They always say a parent is only as happy as their least happy child. Yaakov suffered, Rivka suffered, or this wasn't really her engineering. As we see over here, your brother will forget. But then we see, as Janet mentioned, I'm taking the psukim at face value, when they do get together, when they do once again get together, on page 176, Esav runs to him, 176, Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Dalid, Vayaratz Esav Likrato, Esav runs to him, embraces him, falls upon his neck, kisses him, and they wept. Verse 5, who are these to you, the children? What's the whole gift? It's to find favor. I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. Right? Esav says, let's travel together. Esav has changed. Let's end now. Let's go to page 190, 192. Remember, he said, when my father dies, I'm going to kill him. I will kill Yaakov. What actually happens? Perek Lamed Hey, Pasuk Chaf Tet. The very last line on page 190, the last two words, Vayigva Yitzchak. Yitzchak died. We go to page 192, Vayamat. Vayasef Elamav. He was gathered to his nation, to his people. Zakein Usvayamim. He was old, fulfilled of days. Vayikfuru Oto. And he was buried by who? Esav, Yaakov, Banav. Esav and Yaakov, his sons, together. Now, once again, there are no extra words here. Vikroto Esav Yaakov. I know they are his sons. Why does it say Banav? What is that? What feeling is that giving us? The two of them were the sons. The two of them were now, once again, together. Esav, and 2 points I like to conclude with. One that I said already. When something happens, we could always look outward, or we could look inward and say, what role did I play in it? That's one lesson that we saw that Esav did. Another, I think, very important idea here is when things go wrong, we say, Kashen shemavarchen al hatov, kach mevarchen al hara. The same way we bless God for the good, we need to bless God when things don't go right. Why? Because when they don't go right, it means we've put ourselves into a situation where this is now the right. This is now the best situation for us to be in. Example, Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden. That was perfect place for them until they sinned. Once they sinned, the Garden of Eden was no longer their Gan Eden. It was no longer the appropriate place for them to be. So outside of the Gan Eden became their Garden of Eden, meaning it became the best place for them. Esav had fallen down. Esav, the daughters, the Bechorah, the wives, right? And he lost that bracha. And that is what enabled him to pick himself up. And when things don't go right, A, we need to internalize and say, what role did I play? But say, great, now where do I go from here? What opportunities are now clear to me that were not clear to me before? Sort of like with addiction and hitting rock bottom. Until a person hits rock bottom, they keep going on and on and on. I'm not really alcoholic. I'll just have a drink here once in a while. I can control it. I'm okay. It's not a big deal. It's not a big issue. Once they hit rock bottom, they realize, oh boy, I'm not controlling it. It's controlling me. I've got to get my life in order. And that's what enables. And we have to realize that when we run up against a brick wall, it's a message for us as to how we can now improve. And Esav did take this message and did turn around. And he saw Yaakov and he hugged him and he kissed him. And the two of them together buried Yitzchak, their father. And there was now that the Avelis, now that the mourning has passed, now I can go and kill. That was all past. He was able to see what role have I played, and B, how can I change as a result of that? So that is a somewhat vindication of Esav in a way that my father, alav hashalom, would be happy to hear me teaching. Yes, Cheryl.
That's beautiful. But in response to Leah, when you wondered about Rebecca's punishment, the daughters that she had, daughter-in-laws, seemed to be a horrific punishment to her.
How so?
But Cheryl, those daughters-in-laws preceded the deception, right? Esav had married those girls already well before the death of Isaac. Yeah. Yes, Ora.
So two things. One is the fact that Esav and Yaakov reconciled and made peace. To me, is a metaphor of what we can do one day between the Arabs and the Israelis.
Yeah.
So there is hope. That's one thing. The other thing about Rivka's trickery, the fact that she
if I can just interrupt for a second. Actually, the perfect metaphor for that is Yitzchak and Yishmael burying Avraham. Because that's really the Jews and the Arabs are Yitzchak and Yishmael, and that did happen before by Avram's death.
Yeah. And everything is repeating with a twist. So here is the same motif in this generation.
Yeah.
But the other thing I have to align with Leah about Rivka's trickery, she handed the garments to Jacob. Yeah. So she had an active role in this.
She had an active role, but was it her initiation or was it Yaakov's initiation? That from the verses, right, from what she said initially, it's not clear that she's initiating any deception. She could very well simply be saying, go in there and get a bracha too, right? He wants to give out bracha. He's giving to Esav. I want to make sure you also get a bracha, right? So you also bring food. You also get a bracha. Correct. At a certain point, she is an accomplice, right? But the point that I was making is it's not clear who initiated. Yes, Kathy.
And I think also part of her punishment for playing along in this is she sends him away, and it doesn't seem like she ever sees him again.
Yeah.
So she loses that relationship with him by not seeing him again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good point.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. And that's a direct result of what happened. A direct result of this bracha was the animosity of Esav. And for the next 20 years, actually, right, it was 20 years he was away, and she actually died while he was away, right? So she never saw him again.
Good point.
Yeah,
But also,
that's a very powerful point. Yes, Cheryl.
but she accelerated this whole deception by going and getting the clothes.
Yes. She definitely played a role in it at a certain point. But if we'll say that she did not initiate it, then we could hear her words to Yaakov that until he forgets what you did to him, it's a little less jarring if she wasn't the one who initiated. If she initiated it, then it's a little jarring until he forgets what you did to him, what I did to him. Mom, I was listening to you, right? So it's a little less jarring if we'll understand it, as the psukim seem to read, that the whole "I'll be like a mockery," right? That was Yaakov's injection into this whole plan over here. Okay, my friends, we'll call it over here. Good to be back with everybody. Yasher koach, everybody. Thanks for all your excellent points. The OU
Thank you,
has
Rabbi.
a daily call in at 1:00 Eastern time, 10:00 California time, where a different rabbi gives a little Dvar Torah and also and leads everyone into Hillim. They started this when COVID began, and they still have hundreds of people who call in every day. So in the newsletter, I'm going to be speaking. This is my third rodeo doing it with them. I'm going to be doing it tomorrow. So in the newsletter that's going out today, it has the call-in number. So if you'd like to join tomorrow at 10:00, I'll be giving the Dvar Torah. And if you want to join every day, there's a very nice Dvar Torah given every day. It's about the whole thing is about a 7 to 10 minute little program. So it's a nice thing to have every day, but I'll be on tomorrow. So the newsletter that's going out today has the call-in number, so you can use it tomorrow and then use it not just when I'm speaking, but they have excellent speakers every day. Okay, everybody.
Thank
Good
you,
seeing
Rabbi,
you
and thank
all.
you, everyone.
Shavua
Bye.
Tov, Shavua Tov.
Thank you.